The golden husband. The Miller household looked, from the outside, like a portrait of success. The garden was trimmed immaculately. Every rose bush pruned, the grass clipped with such precision that it seemed almost painted. A glossy black Mercedes sat in the driveway, glinting with late afternoon sunlight. Inside, laughter and the aroma of rosemary chicken filled the house. Mary Miller set the table carefully, her movements graceful, practiced, almost ritualistic. She had been Adrian's wife for nearly a decade, and in that time she had perfected the role of the devoted partner. Every dinner was on time, every shirt pressed, every detail handled before he could ask. And in return, Adrian smiled at her, kissed her forehead before leaving for work, whispered, "You're the backbone of this home, Mary." It was enough, or at least she had convinced herself it was. The sound of the door opening broke her thoughts. "Darling." Adrian's voice carried through the hallway, confident and warm, the voice of a man who belonged to boardrooms and crowded attention. "In here," Mary called, wiping her hands on a towel and moving toward him. Adrian stepped in, tall and broad-shouldered, his tailored suit clinging to him like it had been cut on his body alone. His smile was the kind that drew people closer, open, sincere, masking the calculated eyes behind it. He carried his success like a second skin, and Mary had once believed herself lucky to have been chosen by him. "Something smells incredible," he said, kissing her cheek. "You spoil me." Mary smiled, though faint lines of exhaustion etched the corners of her eyes. "Just chicken. Sit, dinner's ready." At the table, Adrian poured himself a glass of wine, leaned back in his chair, and spoke about his day. Deals closed, clients charmed, people who underestimated him only to fall under his influence. He told these stories with the easy arrogance of a man who believed himself untouchable. Mary listened, nodding in all the right places. But somewhere deep down, she noticed how his phone never left his side. Always face down, always silenced. She noticed how he avoided her gaze when certain names appeared on the screen. She told herself she was imagining things. After all, Adrian Miller was the kind of husband women envied, the successful provider, the affectionate partner. Surely she was only being paranoid. Across town, another dinner table waited. Anna Carter lit candles in her small apartment, the wax dripping over brass holders that looked antique, though she had bought them second-hand. She moved with restless energy, adjusting the angle of the wine glasses, straightening napkins she had already straightened 3 times. The man she waited for was the same man sitting at Mary's table. When Adrian arrived, Anna greeted him with a kiss far more urgent than the polite brush he gave his wife. Her body leaned into his as if starved, her fingers tangling his tie as she whispered, "You're late." Adrian only smirked. "I had to play husband first." She rolled her eyes, but the bitterness in them quickly softened. "Then now you're mine." Dinner went mostly untouched. Adrian had a way of making Anna feel like she was the center of the universe. His words were fire, compliments sharper, more daring than those he ever gave Mary. He told Anna she was intoxicating, dangerous, his guilty sin. And she believed him because she wanted to. When she lay against his chest later, her voice muffled against him, she whispered, "Promise me you'll never leave." Adrian kissed her hair. "Anna, you're the woman who makes me feel alive. How could I ever?" She closed her eyes, content with the lie. The dual life suited him. Adrian thrived in the deception, in the art of balancing 2 worlds. At home, Mary gave him respectability, the polished image of a successful man anchored by a devoted wife. With Anna, he found passion, rebellion, an outlet for desires Mary never touched. But beneath that charm lay a hunger that would never be satisfied. 2 women adored him. Yet even that was not enough. Mary noticed the change first. One evening, as she folded laundry in the bedroom, she caught a faint trace of perfume on his shirt. Not hers. Something heavier, musky, clinging stubbornly to the fabric. She pressed the shirt to her nose, heart pounding, and the doubt she had been suppressing for months roared to life. No, he wouldn't. Not Adrian. He loves me. He tells me every day. Yet when he walked into the room moments later, smiling as though nothing were amiss, she couldn't stop staring at him, searching, wondering. Everything all right? He asked, adjusting his cufflinks. Yes, she lied, forcing a smile. Everything's fine. But inside, a seed of suspicion rooted itself. Anna, too, began to notice cracks. Adrian was distracted during their evenings. His phone buzzed, and he stepped into another room to answer. He canceled plans more frequently, arriving later, leaving earlier. Who keeps calling you? She asked one night, her tone sharp. No one important, he replied smoothly, kissing her to silence the question. Anna wanted to believe him, but belief did not erase doubt. She didn't know it yet, but both women were circling the same truth. Adrian Miller was not the man he pretended to be, and soon they would discover the full extent of his betrayal. But not yet. For now. Adrian remained a golden husband. Flawless outsiders, adored by two women who clung to different illusions of him. Mary told herself she was overthinking. That love demanded trust. Anna convinced herself that men like Adrian were simply busy, that his distractions meant nothing. And Adrian? He was already planning his next conquest. That night, as he lay in bed beside Mary, his arm draped over her shoulder in the picture devotion, his mind wandered elsewhere, not to Anna, but to someone new, a younger woman with a smile like sunlight and innocence in her eyes. Her name was Claire, and Adrian had already decided she would be his third bride. The cracks appear. Morning sunlight filtered through the wide bay windows of the Miller home, painting golden stripes across the polished wood floors. Mary stood at the kitchen counter, pouring steaming coffee into Adrian's favorite mug, the navy blue one with a faint chip at the rim that he had insisted she never throw away. Adrian entered in a rush, jacket slung over his arm, his phone already in hand. You're late today, Mary said softly, trying to keep her tone light. He glanced at his watch, then at her. Busy morning, meeting I can't miss. Mary placed a mug in front of him. At least drink your coffee. He gave her a fleeting kiss on the cheek, barely touching her skin. Can't. I'll grab something on the way. And just like that, he was gone, door clicking shut, tires crunching over gravel. Mary stood in the silence, staring at the untouched coffee cooling on the counter. He had never left without it before. The changes were subtle at first. Adrian came home later than usual, sometimes claiming traffic, other times urgent paperwork. His shirts carried faint traces of cologne she didn't recognize. When Mary called him during the day, he often didn't answer until hours later. At night, his body was next to hers, but his mind felt miles away. Mary kept telling herself it was stress. Men like Adrian carried burdens, after all. But still, something gnawed at her. The seed of doubt grew. Across town, Anna wasn't faring much better. She had always loved Adrian's intensity, the way he made her feel like the only woman in the world when he was with her. But lately, that intensity had dulled. One evening, as she leaned across the table to refill his glass of wine, she noticed him staring past her, his jaw tense. You're somewhere else, she said, her voice sharp. He blinked, pulling his gaze back to her. Just tired. Tired. Anna crossed her arms. Every time you're here, it's less and less of you. Do you have someone else? The accusation slipped out before she could stop it. Adrian chuckled, a practiced, smooth sound. He reached across the table and took her hand. Anna, don't be ridiculous. You're too much for me as it is. She tried to smile, but his words felt rehearsed. When he left that night, she pressed her face into his pillow, inhaling his scent. But beneath the familiar fragrance was something foreign, perfume. Sweet, feminine, not hers. Anna clenched the sheets in her fists. The walls of Adrian's perfect deception were thinning. One afternoon, Mary decided to surprise him at the office with lunch. She packed his favorite, grilled salmon with lemon butter, tucked neatly in containers, and drove downtown. The receptionist, a cheerful young woman, greeted her warmly. Mrs. Miller, Adrian didn't mention you were coming. Mary smiled politely. I thought I'd surprise him. Is he in? The receptionist hesitated. He stepped out, said he had a client meeting across town. Mary's heart sank. She glanced at the clock. Noon. She placed a bag of food on the counter. Please give this to him when he's back. But as she walked back to her car, she spotted Adrian's car parked in the corner of the lot. Her hand trembled as she pulled out her phone, staring at his contact picture. Should she call? Demand an explanation? She didn't. Instead, she slid into her car, gripped the steering wheel, and sat there, the weight of silence crushing her. Anna's breaking point came weeks later. It was late. Adrian had promised he would be at her apartment by 9. At 9:30, she called. No answer. At 10, she called again, straight to voicemail. By 11, rage boiled through her. When the door finally opened near midnight, Adrian walked in, looking flawless as ever in his tailored suit. "You're late," she spat, arms folded. He loosened his tie casually. "Business dinner. I told you. You didn't answer my calls." "My phone died." Anna's laugh was bitter. "You think I'm stupid, Adrian? Do you think I don't notice? The missed calls, the perfume, the lies?" His expression hardened, a flicker of irritation beneath his charming mask. "You're imagining things." "Am I?" she pressed. "Then prove it. Where were you?" For a moment, silence stretched between them. Adrian stepped closer, his voice lowering to that dangerous softness he used when he wanted to control the conversation. "Anna, don't push me. You know how much I care for you. But if you don't trust me..." He let the sentence hang unfinished, heavy with threat. Her fury melted into fear. The thought of losing him, of being discarded, was unbearable. She looked away, swallowing her anger. "Fine," she whispered. Adrian kissed her forehead, the gesture almost paternal. "Good girl." Meanwhile, Mary's suspicions had hardened into quiet vigilance. She began noticing patterns. The shirts with lipstick faint enough to be mistaken for smudges. The receipts hidden in his wallet. Expensive dinners at places they had never visited together. The lingering scent of perfume that wasn't hers. And his phone. Always locked. Always clutched close. One night, after Adrian fell asleep, Mary reached for it. Her fingers hovered over the smooth black screen. She knew his passcode. It was her birthday. But when she tried it, the phone buzzed red. Wrong code. Her stomach dropped. He had changed it. She replaced the phone carefully, her hands trembling, her heart pounding so loud she feared it would wake him. Lying beside his sleeping form, she stared into the darkness, the truth pressing down on her chest. He's hiding something from me. Something big. Adrian, in the meantime, moved through his world untouched, confident in his ability to juggle lies. At home, he was a polished husband. With Anna, he was a passionate lover. But even that wasn't enough anymore. At a business gala, he met her, Claire. She was 24, bright-eyed, the daughter of one of his associates. Her laughter was soft, unguarded, the kind of innocence Adrian found intoxicating. She looked at him with admiration, the way people once did before they learned who he really was. He bought her a drink. She blushed. He told her she had the most enchanting smile he'd ever seen. By the end of the night, Adrian knew Mary was stability, Anna was fire, but Claire would be his new conquest. And neither of his wives had the faintest idea what storm was about to come. The revelation. The first time Mary saw Claire, it was by accident. She had gone to meet Adrian for lunch again, this time determined not to let herself be brushed aside. She wore her best dress, a soft cream fabric he once had made her look radiant, and carried a smile she forced into place, even though suspicion burned in her chest. Adrian wasn't at his office, but Claire was. Mary spotted her as she stepped out of the elevator, a young woman with honey blonde hair that fell in waves, her smile fresh, unweathered by age or responsibility. She carried a bouquet of lilies, white and fragrant, and a gift bag tied neatly with gold ribbon. Mary froze. "Are you looking for Mr. Miller?" The receptionist asked her cheerfully. "Yes," Mary replied, eyes still fixed on the girl. "Who's she?" The receptionist lowered her voice, as if sharing gossip. "That's Claire. She's been coming by often lately." I think she trailed off, then giggled nervously. "Well, Mr. Miller hasn't exactly been discreet." The words hit Mary like a blow to the chest. not discreet. Her husband wasn't just distracted. He wasn't just pulling away. He was flaunting another woman. Mary left without waiting for Adrian. The lunch she had prepared sat heavy in her arms, untouched. Anna's discovery came differently. She had been restless for days, unable to shake the gnawing suspicion that Adrian was slipping further from her. One evening, unable to restrain herself, she followed him. Adrian had told her he was attending a late business meeting. She waited outside his office until he left, her small car tucked discreetly into the shadows. He didn't drive toward the corporate district. He drove toward the waterfront. Anna tailed him, her heart hammering with each turn. She watched as he parked outside a restaurant glittering with soft lights, the kind of romantic place he had once taken her when everything was new. And then she saw Claire. The young woman walked toward him, her hand slipping naturally into his as though it had been there 100 times before. Adrian smiled at her, that devastating smile Anna had once believed belonged only to her. She stayed in her car, nails digging into the steering wheel, her entire body trembling with rage. When Adrian leaned in and kissed Claire beneath the glowing sign of the restaurant, Anna bit back a cry that clawed at her throat. He wasn't just cheating on his wife. He was cheating on both of them. Days later, fate forced the truth into the open. Mary had been sitting in her car outside Adrian's office again. She told herself she wasn't spying, but she knew better. She needed confirmation, proof, and she wasn't alone. Anna's car pulled up across the street. At first, neither woman noticed the other. They sat in silence, both watching the entrance like predators waiting for prey. And then Adrian appeared, his hand protectively on Claire's back as he escorted her to the car. Mary's world tilted, Anna's vision blurred with fury. The two women saw each other then, eyes locking across the narrow stretch of asphalt, recognition dawning like fire. Mary stepped out of her car first, her legs stiff, her chest tight with a betrayal choking her. Anna followed, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement. They met in the middle. "You!" Anna hissed, her voice low but venomous. Mary's face hardened. "So it's true. You're the one." Anna's lips twisted into a bitter smile. "Don't look at me like that. I thought I was the only one too. Turns out your perfect husband collects women like trophies." Mary flinched, but she didn't argue. She couldn't, because in that moment, Claire's laughter carried across the lot, clear and sweet as a bell. Adrian looked at the girl with an expression Mary had never seen before. Not with her. Not even with Anna. Possessive. Hungry. As if she were his brand new prize. The sight shattered them both. Anna's voice trembled with fury. "We were fools." Mary's eyes never left Adrian as he kissed Claire's temple, guiding her into the car. "Not fools," she said softly, the words like steel. "Victims." For the first time, Anna's rage flickered into something else. Recognition. A shared pain. They stood there together, silent, watching the man who had ruined them both drive away with his next conquest. That night, Mary sat alone in her bedroom, the untouched dinner still on the table downstairs. She stared at the empty side of the bed, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The image of Adrian with Claire replayed in her mind again and again, each time cutting deeper. She thought of the years she had given him, the sacrifices, the patience, the way she had bent her entire life around him. And for what? So he could throw her away like something old, worn, useless? Her tears dried slowly, replaced by a coldness she had never felt before. If he thinks he can discard me, he's mistaken. Anna, too, sat alone that night, pacing her apartment like a caged animal. Her anger burned hotter than grief, but beneath it lay a raw wound. She had known Adrian was a liar, a manipulator, but she had believed at least that she was the one exception, that in his twisted life, she was the secret he would never abandon. Seeing Claire proved otherwise. She poured herself a glass of wine, drank half of it in a swallow, and then hurled the glass against the wall, watching it shatter. "Bastard," she whispered. But anger was enough. She needed something more. Revenge. The next day, as if drawn by invisible threads, Mary and Anna met again. Not by chance this time. Anna had called her. They sat across from each other in a quiet cafe. the air between them sharp with unspoken hostility. Mary broke the silence. "I should hate you." "You probably do," Anna replied flatly. "I thought you were the reason my marriage was falling apart." Anna's laugh was bitter. "And I thought you were the obstacle standing between us." Turns out he was screwing us both. The words hung in the air, undeniable, ugly. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other. Two women bound by betrayal, their pain mirrored in each other's eyes. Finally, Mary leaned forward, her voice low. He's planning to marry her. The girl, Claire. Anna's hand tightened around her cup. "You're sure?" I saw the way he looked at her. He never looked at me that way. Anna's jaw clenched. "So what? He thinks he can cheat us, humiliate us, and then just start over?" Mary's voice sharpened. "Not if we stop him." Anna's eyes flickered with something dangerous. "You mean revenge?" Mary's lips curved into a cold smile. "Exactly." That night, Adrian returned home late. He walked into the bedroom, loosening his tie, whistling softly under his breath. Mary sat at the vanity, brushing her hair, her expression calm, almost serene. "How was your day?" she asked gently. "Busy," Adrian replied, kissing the top of her head. "But worth it." Mary caught his gaze in the mirror, her own eyes unreadable. She smiled, and Adrian never noticed a subtle shift in her, how the devotion in her eyes had cooled into calculation. He didn't know that his wives, his cast-off lovers, were already plotting the storm that would one day devour him. The wives' meeting. The cafe where Mary and Anna sat together had smelled faintly of cinnamon and roasted beans, but wasn't warmth that lingered between them after that first uneasy conversation. It was tension, sharp and unrelenting. They had agreed to meet again, though neither woman fully trusted the other. What they did share was a bond far stronger than friendship could forge. The same betrayal, the same enemy, and a thirst for reckoning that grew sharper by the day. They met the second time at Mary's house. It was a Saturday afternoon, the sun filtering lazily through the lace curtains. Mary had chosen the living room deliberately, the space Adrian himself had boasted about to colleagues and neighbors. Every cushion fluffed, every photo on the walls carefully placed. Smiles from vacations, anniversaries, moments that meant nothing now. Anna sat on the edge of the sofa, crossing one long leg over the other, her fiery presence at odds with the pristine calm of the room. She glanced around, smirking. "So this is a shrine," she said. Mary's jaw tightened. "It's a home." A home he polluted. Anna's gaze flicked to a framed photograph of Adrian and Mary, their smiles glowing under candlelight. "He never mentioned you much. Just called you his obligation." Mary's face paled, but she held her composure. "And you believed him?" Anna hesitated, then exhaled sharply. "I wanted to, because if he was lying to you, it meant I was the one he really loved." The silence between them thickened. Mary set down the teacup she had been holding, her hand steady despite the storm swirling inside her. "We can keep blaming each other," she said quietly, "or we can admit the truth. Adrian lied to us both, used us both, and now he's doing it again with her." Anna leaned forward, eyes blazing. "Claire, the child, she has no idea what she's walking into." Mary's tone was sharp. "Do you pity her?" Anna's lips curved into a cruel smile. "Not pity, but if she thinks she'll be different, she's in for a very rude awakening." Mary's gaze hardened. "She's not our concern. He is." The two women sat for a long while, words spilling slowly, guarded at first, then freer as they realized just how many lies Adrian had fed them. Mary told Anna the nights he slipped into bed late, the excuses, the way he had changed his phone code. Anna told Mary the dinners that never happened, the missed calls, the perfume clinging to him that wasn't hers either. They compared details like detectives assembling a case, each revelation tightening the rope around Adrian's neck. "He doesn't even bother covering his tracks anymore," Anna muttered. "Arrogant bastard thinks he's untouchable." Mary's voice was calm, but her eyes burned. "Then it's time we show him he isn't." The alliance didn't form instantly. Distrust lingered. When Anna suggested digging into Adrian's financial dealings, Mary hesitated. "You think we should ruin him publicly?" Mary asked, "Why not?" He cares more about his reputation than anything else. Strip him of that, and he'll wither. Mary's lips press together. I want him to suffer, yes, but carefully, not recklessly. If we expose him too soon, he'll twist the narrative. He always does. Anna arched a brow. You sound like you know him too well. I was married to him for 10 years, Mary said coldly. I know every mask he wears. Anna leaned back, studying her. Then, slowly, she nodded. Fine, we'll play it your way, for now. But when the time comes, I want him broken, not just embarrassed. Broken. Mary's eyes met hers, steady and unflinching. Then were agreed. Over the next weeks, the two women began to work in secret. Anna had fire, boldness, the willingness to take risks. Mary had patience, precision, and a calculating mind sharpened by years of suppressing suspicion. Together, they formed something Adrian had never anticipated, a partnership built on shared fury. Anna gathered information recklessly, overhearing conversations, following Adrian's car, slipping bribes to waiters and hotel clerks. Mary gathered quietly, checking bank statements, credit card receipts, reading subtle patterns in his behavior. Piece by piece, the picture came together. The gift he bought Claire, the trips he had planned, even whispers an engagement ring purchased from a jeweler in the city. When Anna placed a receipt on Mary's dining table, her nails tapping furiously against it, the truth was undeniable. He's going to marry her, Anna said. Mary stared at the receipt, her heart a cold stone in her chest, and discarded us completely. Anna's eyes blazed. Not if we strike first. Their conversations grew darker. What would ruin him most? Anna asked one night, as they sat in Mary's kitchen, a bottle of wine between them. Mary thought for a long time before answering. His reputation, his wealth, his ego. He thrives on admiration. Strip that away and he'll collapse. Anna smirked. And then, Mary's gaze was ice. Then we'll decide whether to leave him ruined or destroy him entirely. Anna laughed softly, though there was no humor in it. I never thought I'd be plotting with his wife. Life's funny, isn't it? Mary gave a thin smile. I never thought I'd be plotting with his mistress. For the first time, they both laughed sharp, bitter laughter that carried more venom than joy. Meanwhile, Adrian remained blissfully unaware. He continued his double life, believing himself invincible. With Mary, he maintained the image of the polished husband. With Anna, he still played the passionate lover when it suited him. And with Claire, he became something else entirely, a charming suitor, weaving promises of a dazzling future. He had no idea that every word he spoke, every lie he spun, was being recorded in the memories of two women who now worked against him. Their third meeting came late one evening. Anna had followed Adrian again, this time to a quiet park where he and Claire walked hand in hand. She snapped photos from the shadows, his arm around Claire, his lips brushing hers beneath the glow of a street lamp. She delivered them to Mary like trophies. Mary studied the photos in silence. Her fingers traced the edges, but her face showed no tears, no pain, only resolve. Good, she said softly. We'll need these. Anna tilted her head. For what? Mary's eyes lifted, sharp as glass, for the beginning of the end. When Adrian returned home that night, he found Mary sitting in the living room, a soft smile on her lips, a glass of wine in her hand. Long day? She asked sweetly. Exhausting, Adrian replied, dropping his keys on the table. Mary stood, kissed his cheek, and whispered, Rest, darling. You deserve it. And as he walked upstairs, unaware of the silence were brewing beneath his roof, Mary's smile lingered, calm, patient, merciless. For the first time in years, she no longer felt powerless. The planning. The Miller living room had become a war room. Once, its shelves had been filled with photo frames celebrating anniversaries, vacations, and smiling lies. Now the photographs were pushed aside, replaced by manila folders, bank statements, and a scattering of photographs Anna had taken of Adrian and Claire in stolen moments of intimacy. Mary sat at the head of the coffee table, her posture straight, her expression calm but severe. Anna sprawled on the couch, a glass of red wine in her hand, her fiery energy restless against Mary's cold precision. Between them lay their shared obsession, Adrian's downfall. Mary spoke first. "His pride is his weakness," she said, tapping a receipt with her finger. "He needs admiration. He needs people to see him as flawless. If we take that away, he'll crumble." Anna smirked, swirling her wine. "Reputation, money, power. Strip him bare. But it can't be quick. A slap in the face isn't enough for what he's done." Mary nodded. "It has to be slow. Cruel. He must feel the walls closing in around him, inch by inch." Anna's eyes gleamed. "Now you're speaking my language." They began to lay out their plan piece by piece. Step 1, financial ruin. Anna had contacts, bartenders, clerks, even a loan officer she had once charmed, who owed her favors. Through them, she learned that Adrian's investments weren't as bulletproof as he claimed. His lavish spending on Claire, expensive jewelry, a downtown apartment, luxury getaways, was draining him faster than he realized. "If we tip the right domino," Anna said, tapping her nail against a ledger, "he'll bleed money before he knows he's wounded." Mary added calmly, "And when he's desperate, he'll make mistakes. Mistakes we can use." Step 2, reputation. Adrian's business thrived on his image, the golden entrepreneur, the devoted family man. Mary knew exactly which doors to knock on, which charity events to whisper at, which socialites would be delighted to gossip, if given the right push. Photographs of him with Claire, Mary said, sliding Anna's pictures across the table. Anonymous delivery to his partners. They'll begin to wonder what kind of man they're really investing in. Anna's lips curved into a sharp smile. And the wives? The respectable board members' wives? They'll shred his name before the men even finish their cigars. Step 3, humiliation. Money and reputation aren't enough, Anna said. He needs to suffer where it hurts most. His ego. Mary's eyes darkened. And his heart. Anna laughed bitterly. He doesn't have one. Then we'll make him think he does. And then crush it. For hours they planned, their voices alternating between whispers and sharp declarations, their minds weaving a net of vengeance. The differences in their personalities, once a barrier, now became their greatest weapon. Anna's daring schemes, reckless, fiery. Mary's careful strategies, measured, deliberate. Together, they formed the perfect storm. As midnight approached, their plotting shifted from practical to personal. Anna leaned back on the couch, her eyes glittering in the lamplight. "Do you ever think about killing him?" Mary paused, her fingers stilling over the papers. "Every day." Anna raised her glass in mock salute. "To murder, then?" Mary's voice was calm, unshaken. "Not yet. Death is too merciful. I want him to beg for it before it comes." The words hung in the air, heavier than any plan they had yet devised. The days that followed became a delicate dance of secrecy. Mary played her role as the perfect wife, her smile as polished as the silverware she set on the table. She kissed Adrian goodbye each morning, waved from the porch, and then retreated inside to phone Anna, their hushed conversations weaving tighter ropes around his neck. Anna, meanwhile, continued her act as a passionate mistress, though the taste of his kisses now filled her with revulsion. She endured his touch only to extract more lies, more slips of information that they could twist into weapons. Adrian, blind to the storm brewing, reveled in his own cleverness. With Mary, he was the doting husband. With Anna, the reckless lover. With Claire, the perfect suitor. He never noticed the cracks widening beneath his feet. One evening, Mary and Anna met in a hotel bar under the pretense of book club friends. Mary wore her hair differently. A silk scarf tied loosely at her neck, her disguise subtle but effective. Anna arrived in a sharp black dress, her eyes scanning the room for any sign of Adrian before she slid into the booth. Mary pushed a folded paper across the table. "His accounts. He's been dipping into reserves. If he keeps this up, he'll be broke within the year." Anna smirked, sipping her martini. "Then let's speed it along." Mary's voice remained soft. "Patience. If we move too fast, he'll sense it. Better to let him think he's still winning." Anna leaned closer, her voice a hiss. "And Claire? What about her?" Mary's gaze was icy. "She'll be useful, The brighter she shines in his eyes, the darker the fall will be when we tear her away from him. Anna grinned. Remind me never to get on your bad side. Back at the Miller home, Adrian noticed none of Mary's subtle changes. He didn't see the way her smile no longer reached her eyes, or the way she studied him like a specimen under glass. He only saw what he wanted to see, the devoted wife, still blind, and when he slipped out at night with excuses about late meetings, Mary simply kissed his cheek and wished him luck, her eyes following him with cold calculation as he left. Anna's fire burned hotter with each passing day. When Adrian touched her, she imagined stabbing him with the pen he used to sign contracts. When he whispered his false declarations of love, she fantasized about clawing the smugness from his face. But she restrained herself. For now, because Mary was right. Patience would make the revenge sweeter. Their final meeting that week was in Mary's garden, the roses blooming blood red in the summer heat. They sat beneath the trellis, the flowers surrounding them like silent witnesses. Anna leaned back, lighting a cigarette. So when do we start? Mary's gaze was steady, unflinching. We already have. Anna exhaled a stream of smoke, her smile sharp. Then here's to Adrian Miller, the man about to lose everything. Mary raised her teacup instead of a glass, her lips curving into the faintest of smiles. "'Tis ruin," she agreed, and the roses, vivid and thorned, seemed to nod in approval. The seduction of greed. Adrian Miller had always been a man who believed he was 3 steps ahead of everyone else. He prided himself on it. The ability to juggle lies with charm, to balance his women like accounts in his ledger. To him, Mary was stability, Anna was fire, and Claire was the bright, untarnished prize that proved he could have anything he wanted. But what Adrian never noticed was that his hunger, his endless, gnawing greed, was the very thing Mary and Anna now fed. And soon it would consume him. The first trap was money. Mary knew Adrian's habits better than anyone. He loved investments that glittered, deals that promised instant returns. He couldn't resist the bait of fast profit, even if it meant ignoring his better judgment. So, when Mary casually mentioned over dinner that she'd overheard one of the board members at her charity luncheon talking about a lucrative new real estate opportunity, Adrian's eyes gleamed. "What kind of opportunity?" he asked, trying to sound indifferent but failing. Mary pretended to hesitate. "I don't know the details. They didn't mean for me to hear, I suppose. Something about waterfront development, very hush-hush." She poured him another glass of wine and smiled softly, but it sounded substantial. Adrian leaned forward. "Do you remember who said it?" Mary shook her head with feigned innocence. "I didn't catch the name, but I could ask around." She watched as he swallowed the bait whole. Meanwhile, Anna stoked his other addiction, lust. One evening, as she lay tangled in his arms, she whispered, "You know, I heard something too. A rumor about one of your rivals making moves in the city. A man like you can't afford to be distracted." Adrian smirked, kissing her shoulder. "I'm not distracted. Not with you here." She laughed, low and sharp. "You're always distracted, Adrian. With your wife. With your new little toy." Her voice dripped venom on the last word. He stiffened. "You know I love you, Anna. Claire is just..." He trailed off, searching for a word that didn't make him sound like the monster he was. Anna supplied it for him. "Convenient." Adrian chuckled, relieved. "Exactly. Convenient." But Anna knew his type. He couldn't stand the thought of losing either of them. So she leaned closer, biting his lip just enough to sting, and whispered, "Then prove to me I'm the one who matters. Prove it with something big." He grinned, too arrogant to recognize the trap tightening around him. Over the following weeks, Mary and Anna worked in tandem, without ever revealing it to him. Mary fed him whispers of opportunity, small seeds agreed, planted carefully at the right moments. Anna pressed on his ego, feeling his need to show her he was powerful, important, indispensable. Adrian responded exactly as they predicted, pouring money into risky ventures, chasing deals that seemed too good to be true, all while assuring both women that they were the center of his world. Claire, meanwhile, remained blissfully naive. She walked on Adrian's arm at parties, dazzled by his charisma, thrilled by the jewelry he draped around her neck. She saw only the prince, never the wolf beneath the suit. One evening, Mary and Anna met again in the garden, the air heavy with the scent of late-blooming roses. Anna flicked ash from her cigarette, smirking. He took the bait. I pushed him about proving himself, and suddenly he's bragging about some waterfront project he's invested in. Said it's going to double in value. Mary's lips curved in a cold smile. Perfect. I gave him that seed. Now he's watering it himself. Anna raised a brow. You're colder than I thought. Mary's gaze was steady. He taught me how. Anna exhaled smoke, watching it curl into the night sky. So what's next? Mary's voice was soft but firm. We let him sink. When the time comes, we'll cut the rope entirely. Adrian, oblivious, reveled in his own cleverness. He spoke to Mary at breakfast about how she was the only one who believed in him, how her quiet faith inspired him. He praised Anna for fueling his ambition, for making him feel alive. He whispered to Claire about a future where she would be his wife, his queen, the jewel of his empire. And in every word, every promise, he failed to notice the strings tightening around his limbs. The second trap came through reputation. Anna had acquired a flash drive filled with documents from one of Adrian's business associates, a man who had grown tired of Adrian's arrogance and was easily convinced to part with incriminating files for the right price. She placed the drive in Mary's hand one afternoon. This will bury him if it gets out. Mary slid it into her pocket, without flinching. It will, but not yet. Anna tilted her head. You really do enjoy dragging this out. Mary's eyes narrowed slightly. Every day he thinks he's untouchable is another day he digs his own grave. And so Adrian continued, blind and greedy, seduced by promises of wealth, love, and admiration. He didn't see the way Mary watched him with cold calculation as she refilled his wine glass. He didn't see the way Anna smiled through gritted teeth as he kissed her. He didn't see the shadow of the trap closing around him, inch by inch. But Claire began to sense something. One evening, as Adrian slipped a diamond ring onto her finger in the quiet of her apartment, she looked at him with wide, uncertain eyes. It's beautiful, she whispered. But doesn't your wife know? Adrian kissed her, silencing the question. Mary understands. She's comfortable. This is different. Claire, this is real. She blushed, believing the lie. But as he held her close, she noticed something she hadn't before, the faintest trace of lipstick on his collar, a shade darker than hers. For the first time, doubt stirred. Back in her house, Mary sat alone in the quiet after Adrian had gone to bed. She stared at herself in the mirror, the woman who had once believed in love, in loyalty. That woman was gone. Now there was only resolve. She whispered softly to her reflection, her voice calm, almost serene. He will lose everything, and I will be the one who takes it from him. The third wife's awakening. Claire Dalton had never believed in fairy tales until she met Adrian Miller. He had swept into her life like a storybook prince. Expensive suits, smooth words, a smile that made her feel like she was the only woman in the room. He had promised her a life filled with elegance, stability, and passion. For months, she had clung to that dream. She wore his diamonds. She let him parade her on his arm, and she told herself that the whispers about him being married were lies, or misunderstandings, or old affairs that meant nothing now. But dreams, Claire's beginning to learn, rot when held too tightly. It began with little things. The lipstick stain she had seen on his collar, too dark to be hers, too bold to ignore. The text messages he hid when his phone buzzed at dinner. The faint scent of perfume that wasn't hers lingering on his suit jacket when he tossed it across her chair. At first, she told herself she was imagining it. Adrian was a busy man, powerful, important. Women probably flirted with him all the time. That didn't mean anything. He had chosen her. But late at night, lying awake in her apartment while Adrian stayed at his meetings, the unease grew claws. One afternoon, Claire decided to surprise him. She drove to his office with a small box of pastries from his favorite cafe, her heart fluttering with excitement. She wanted to see the look in his eyes when she appeared unannounced, proof that she cared enough to think of him during her day. But when she arrived, the receptionist gave her a puzzled smile. "Mr. Miller left hours ago," she said. Claire's stomach tightened. Left? Where to? The receptionist hesitated. "I'm not sure, but I think he mentioned dinner plans." Claire forced a smile, thanked her, and left. She drove home with the pastries untouched beside her, her mind spiraling. Dinner plans. With who? Not her. Not tonight. When Adrian finally appeared at her apartment, smelling faintly of wine and laughter, she asked softly, "Where were you?" He kissed her forehead and smiled. "Just business, sweetheart. You don't need to worry." And for the first time, Claire realized she did not believe him. The following week, Claire's doubts solidified into suspicion. At a charity gala, Adrian introduced her to several of his colleagues. She smiled politely, shook hands, played her role as his radiant companion. But when one of the wives, a sharp-eyed woman with too much jewelry and a cruel smile, leaned close and whispered, "Poor dear, does his real wife know you're here?" Claire froze. Her cheeks burned as Adrian whisked her away, laughing, brushing off the comment as meaningless gossip. But the word stuck like thorns. His real wife. That night, while Adrian slept beside her in their hotel room, Claire lay awake staring at the ceiling. She replayed every moment, every gift, every kiss. She thought of the secrecy, the hurried explanations, the way he never stayed the entire night. And then she thought of that woman's smirk. Real wife. Claire slipped quietly from bed, her heart hammering, and crept into the bathroom with Adrian's phone. She hesitated only a moment before unlocking it. He had once, carelessly, entered his passcode in front of her. The messages were there, damning in their intimacy. "Anna, when will you leave her?" "Adrian, soon. You're the one I want. Always. Anna, prove it." Claire's throat tightened. Another woman. Another her. Scrolling further, she found older messages. "Mary, don't be late for dinner. Emily is asking about you." "Adrian, I won't, darling. I promise." Claire's hands shook. Not one woman. Not two. Three. Herself included. By the time she crawled back into bed, Claire's fairy tale had shattered into jagged glass. She lay beside him, staring at the man she thought she loved, and felt something cold and unfamiliar bloom in her chest. It wasn't sorrow. It wasn't heartbreak. It was rage. Over the next few days, Claire played her role with perfect precision. She smiled when Adrian brought her flowers. She laughed at his jokes. She let him believe she was still blind, still wrapped in his spell. But inside, she was unraveling every thread of illusion. She watched him more closely. She listened to the tones of his lies. She memorized the names in his phone, the faces of the people he surrounded himself with. She wasn't naive anymore. She was studying him. One evening, while Adrian was showering, Claire sat at the vanity and stared at herself in the mirror. The young woman who had once blushed under his gaze was gone. Her eyes were harder now, sharper. She touched the diamond necklace at her throat and realized it was nothing but a collar, one she had worn willingly. But no longer. She whispered to her reflection, "If he thinks I'm his prize, he's a fool." Her own voice startled her. Cold, controlled, the voice of someone who had been awakened. The turning point came when Claire, restless and searching, found herself in a bookstore downtown. She wandered aimlessly until her eyes fell on a woman standing in the history section, poised, elegant, with eyes like steel. Mary. They had never spoken, but Claire recognized her instantly. She had seen her face in photographs online, the respectable wife of Adrian Miller. Mary glanced up, and for a moment their eyes met. Claire froze, her heart hammering. Mary's gaze lingered only a second before she returned to the book in her hands, as if Claire were no more significant than a shadow. But in that brief moment, Claire saw it. Pain buried under composure, fury hidden beneath grace. And Claire knew she wasn't alone. That night, when Adrian came to her with his easy smile and practiced charm, Claire kissed him, whispered his name, and played the part he expected. But inside, her mind was elsewhere. She wasn't thinking of his hands on her skin. She was thinking of Mary's eyes, the eyes of another woman who knew the truth, the eyes of someone who might understand. Adrian Miller, for the first time in his charmed life, was not just being deceived by his wives. Now, the youngest, the newest, the one he thought was safely ensnared, had awakened, and she was watching him with open eyes. The trap closes. Adrian Miller was at his most dangerous when he thought he was untouchable. He strode through life with a smile carved from confidence and arrogance, unaware of the storm building around him. He believed his wives were locked into their roles. Mary the patient, Anna the passionate, Claire the innocent. He thought himself the puppeteer, pulling their strings, keeping them dangling. But the strings were fraying, and soon they would strangle him. Mary and Anna had never worked in harmony before. For years, they had been rivals, fighting for scraps of Adrian's attention, despising one another as much as they despised him. But betrayal had a way of dissolving rivalry. Now, they met in secret, the back booth of an old cafe, a quiet garden bench, cloaked in the shadow of roses, a parked car on a deserted street. Their conversations were cold, sharp, practical. There was no need for affection between them, only purpose. Anna leaned across the cafe table one afternoon, her voice low. He's stretched thin financially. That waterfront project he poured money into? A dead end. The permits are tied up in litigation. He's sunk millions already. Mary stirred her coffee, her face unreadable. Good. Let him bleed money. When the investors pull out, he'll be desperate. Anna smirked. Desperate men make mistakes. Mary's eyes flicked up, steel gray, exactly the mistakes we'll use to destroy him. Meanwhile, Adrian strutted obliviously through his empire. He boasted at dinners about upcoming profits, kissed Claire's hand as if she were the jewel of his crown, whispered to Anna that she was his true passion, and assured Mary that she was the only one who understood him. Each woman wore her mask. Mary listened, smiled politely, and waited. Anna played the temptress, urging him to take bigger risks, feeding his ego. Claire, still the newest at the game, feigned her innocence, nodding along to his every word while inside, her thoughts sharpened into knives. It was Claire who first glimpsed the cracks in Adrian's empire from the inside. One evening, Adrian left a folder open on the desk in her apartment. While he showered, she glanced at the papers. Numbers, projections, contracts. Even with her limited knowledge of business, she could see the losses. Millions gone. More millions promised. His empire wasn't thriving. It was teetering. When Adrian emerged from the shower, toweling his hair, Claire was sitting quietly on the couch, pretending to scroll her phone. But inside, her pulse raced. She now held another piece of the puzzle. Mary and Anna were already sharpening the blade. From a flash drive Anna had procured weeks before, they had documents exposing Adrian's shady dealings, tax evasion, shell companies, fraudulent numbers he fed to investors. Enough to ruin him if released. Mary kept the files locked in a safety deposit box. She carried only a copy on her laptop, password protected. Anna teased her once, saying, "You guard that thing like it's treasure." Mary's answer was flat. "It is treasure, the kind that will burn him alive." The three wives' lives began to orbit closer and closer, though Adrian never noticed. Claire spotted Anna one evening outside a hotel lobby. She lingered, watching from across the street as Adrian kissed Anna's hand and led her inside. Later, Claire spotted Mary leaving the same charity gala Adrian had dragged her to, walking alone to her car with a quiet grace. The patterns were clear. Adrian belonged to none of them. He belonged only to his hunger. Claire's rage boiled hotter. But for now, she kept silent. She wasn't ready to reveal her knowledge. Not yet. The final push came with the gala Adrian himself hosted. It was meant to be a showcase of power. He rented out a grand hall, filled it with chandeliers and string quartets, and filled the guest list with investors, politicians, and socialites. Mary arrived on his arm, her smile calm, her dress understated but elegant, the picture of a devoted wife. Anna appeared later, in a scarlet gown that turned every head. Adrian greeted her like an honored guest, kissing her cheek too warmly, his hand lingering too long. And then Claire entered, dazzling in a pale silver dress Adrian himself had bought her. He introduced her boldly as his dear companion, his voice threaded with pride. 3 women, 1 man, and none of the guests knew the full truth. But the wives knew. Throughout the evening, their eyes met, briefly, fleetingly, across champagne glasses and candlelight. Mary's gaze steady, Anna's sharp, Claire's burning with a new and dangerous resolve. For the first time, Claire understood she wasn't alone. Mary and Anna knew. They always had. And in that silent recognition, something passed between the three women. Not alliance yet, not friendship, but a spark of shared fury. Adrian, drunk on attention and champagne, basked in the glory of the evening. He never saw the way the three women looked at him. He never heard the whispers already starting about his failing investments. He never noticed the way Mary slipped into the corner with an influential guest, whispering just enough to plant suspicion. He never saw Anna flirting with one of his key investors, murmuring hints about concerns in Adrian's books. He never realized Claire was watching his every move, memorizing his patterns, his lies, his weaknesses. The trap was closing. By the end of the night, Adrian toasted his bright future, his voice grand and booming. Mary smiled and clinked her glass against his, her eyes cold. Anna laughed and kissed his cheek, her lips curved in mockery he mistook for devotion. Claire raised her glass too, her smile soft and angelic, while inside her thoughts whispered, "You won't know until it's too late." When the gala ended and Adrian basked in his own glory, the three women departed separately into the night. But in their hearts, each carried the same thought. The time was coming. The empire of Adrian Miller was beginning to collapse. And when it did, they would be the ones holding the wreckage in their hands. The ruin of Adrian. Adrian Miller woke to the sound of his phone, buzzing relentlessly on the nightstand. It was still dark outside. Dawn had not yet broken. He groaned, rubbed his eyes, and reached for phone. The screen was lit up with missed calls, text messages, and urgent emails. His heart sank as he read the subject lines. Investor meeting canceled. Project delay, funds withdrawn. Urgent. Legal action being taken. Adrian sat up in bed, the room spinning. He had gone to sleep basking in the triumph of his gala, convinced the night had cemented his power. But as the light of morning crept into the room, that triumph dissolved into dread. At breakfast, Mary served his coffee with her usual calm grace. "You're quiet this morning," she said, her voice gentle, almost soothing. Adrian forced a smile. "Just business. Nothing you need to worry about." Mary tilted her head, her eyes lingering on his face. "Business has a way of consuming men, Adrian. Don't let it swallow you whole." Her words should have comforted him. Instead, they crawled under his skin like a warning. He didn't quite understand. 2 days later, the first blow landed publicly. An article appeared in a financial journal, dissecting Adrian's failing waterfront project. It detailed the millions wasted, the lawsuits looming, the investors ready to flee. The piece was thorough, well-researched, merciless. Adrian stormed into his office, slamming the paper down on his desk. "Who leaked this?" he demanded of his assistant. She looked pale, uncertain. I don't know, sir, but the reporter seemed to have access to very detailed documents." Adrian froze. Documents. He thought of the files he kept so carefully hidden. Files only someone close to him could have seen. But he shook the thought away. No, it was impossible. Mary was loyal. Anna adored him. Claire worshipped him. They wouldn't dare. Would they? The cracks widened within a week. Investors began withdrawing their support. Banks grew hesitant. Rumors spread like wildfire in boardrooms and cocktail parties. Adrian's phone rang constantly with questions he couldn't answer. At home, he grew restless, pacing, snapping at Mary for trivial things. Anna's visits became shorter, sharper. She teased him about his stress, running her fingers along his jaw with mock sympathy. "You're too brilliant to fail, Adrian," she purred one night, though her smile didn't reach her eyes. He clung to her reassurance, not noticing the faint curve of amusement on her lips as he vented his frustrations. Claire played her role flawlessly. She soothed him when he arrived at her apartment, tired and frayed. She listened quietly as he ranted about betrayal and incompetence. She kissed him tenderly, whispering that he was strong, that he would recover. But when he slept, she slipped from bed and scrolled through the papers he left behind. She memorized his panic, his deadlines, his dwindling accounts. She saw clearly what he could not. The empire he had built was collapsing. and she felt no sorrow, only satisfaction. The second blow struck harder than the first. One of his key investors filed a lawsuit claiming Adrian had misled them with falsified reports. The story hit every major paper, plastering his name across headlines. Mary read the news at the breakfast table, her face calm, her hand steady as she set down her teacup. "Adrian," she said softly, "perhaps it's time to step back. Think of your health, your family." Adrian exploded. "Step back? Do you think I've worked this hard just to step back? This is temporary. I'll fix it." Mary watched him with quiet eyes, saying nothing. But inside, she felt the smallest flicker of triumph. The man who had once seemed invincible was unraveling before her. Anna's role in the destruction became more direct. She whispered doubts into the ears of Adrian's associates at parties, feigning concern. "I just worry about him, you know. He's been erratic lately, making promises he can't keep." Her words spread like poison. Within weeks, Adrian's reputation shifted from respected businessman to reckless fraud. One night, after another investor pulled out, Adrian confronted Anna. "Have you been talking about me?" he demanded, his eyes blazing. Anna tilted her head, feigning innocence. "Talking? Darling, everyone is already talking. I don't need to add to it." She kissed him on the cheek and left him fuming in the doorway. By now, Adrian barely noticed Claire's quiet detachment. He came to her apartment less often, consumed by meetings and lawsuits. But when he did, he was a shell of the man he had been. His once sharp suits looked rumpled. His confident voice cracked with strain. Claire held him, whispering soft lies. "You'll be fine. You'll rise again." But when he wasn't looking, she smiled faintly to herself. The final blow was Mary's. From her safety deposit box, she retrieved a copy of Adrian's hidden dealings. Fraudulent numbers, offshore accounts, bribes. She delivered them anonymously to the authorities. It didn't take long. One morning, Adrian was leaving the house when two men in dark suits approached him on the driveway. They identified themselves as federal investigators. Adrian's face turned white. Mary watched from the doorway, her expression composed, almost serene, as they handed him a subpoena. The empire of Adrian Miller had officially begun to crumble. The news exploded across the city. Prominent businessman under investigation for fraud. Banks froze his accounts. Investors fled entirely. His name, once a badge of pride, became a stain whispered in disgust. At home, he raged. He threw glasses against the wall, cursed his enemies, swore vengeance on nameless traitors. But the three women closest to him remained calm. Mary moved through the house with quiet grace. Anna smiled when he called her, but never offered help. Claire listened, soft and sympathetic, her mind elsewhere. And then came the night when he finally broke. He sat in the living room alone, his head in his hands, the weight of ruin crushing him. Everything was gone. His wealth, his reputation, his empire. Even the women he thought he controlled felt distant, elusive, no longer his. He muttered to himself, "Who betrayed me? Who turned against me?" But the truth was already there, circling him like wolves. The trap had closed. And so Adrian continued, blind and greedy, seduced by promises of wealth, love, and admiration. He didn't see the way Mary watched him with cold calculation as she refilled his wine glass. He didn't see the way Anna smiled through gritted teeth as he kissed her. He didn't see the shadow of the trap closing around him, inch by inch. But Claire began to sense something. One evening, as Adrian slipped a diamond ring onto her finger in the quiet of her apartment, she looked at him with wide, uncertain eyes. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "But doesn't your wife know?" Adrian kissed her, silencing the question. "Mary understands. She's comfortable. This is different. Claire, this is real." She blushed, believing the lie. But as he held her close, she noticed something she hadn't before, the faintest trace of lipstick on his collar, a shade darker than hers. For the first time, doubt stirred. Back in her house, Mary sat alone in the quiet after Adrian had gone to bed. She stared at herself in the mirror, the woman who had once believed in love, in loyalty. That woman was gone. Now there was only resolve. She whispered softly to her reflection, her voice calm, almost serene. He will lose everything, and I will be the one who takes it from him. The third wife's awakening. Claire Dalton had never believed in fairy tales until she met Adrian Miller. He had swept into her life like a storybook prince. Expensive suits, smooth words, a smile that made her feel like she was the only woman in the room. He had promised her a life filled with elegance, stability, and passion. For months, she had clung to that dream. She wore his diamonds. She let him parade her on his arm, and she told herself that the whispers about him being married were lies, or misunderstandings, or old affairs that meant nothing now. But dreams, Claire was beginning to learn, rot when held too tightly. It began with little things. The lipstick stain she had seen on his collar, too dark to be hers, too bold to ignore. The text messages he hid when his phone buzzed at dinner. The faint scent of perfume that wasn't hers lingering on his suit jacket when he tossed it across her chair. At first, she told herself she was imagining it. Adrian was a busy man, powerful, important. Women probably flirted with him all the time. That didn't mean anything. He had chosen her. But late at night, lying awake in her apartment while Adrian stayed at his meetings, the unease grew claws. One afternoon, Claire decided to surprise him. She drove to his office with a small box of pastries from his favorite cafe, her heart fluttering with excitement. She wanted to see the look in his eyes when she appeared unannounced, proof that she cared enough to think of him during her day. But when she arrived, the receptionist gave her a puzzled smile. "Mr. Miller left hours ago," she said. Claire's stomach tightened. "Left? Where to?" The receptionist hesitated. "I'm not sure, but I think he mentioned dinner plans." Claire forced a smile, thanked her, and left. She drove home with the pastries untouched beside her, her mind spiraling. Dinner plans. With who? Not her. Not tonight. When Adrian finally appeared at her apartment, smelling faintly of wine and laughter, she asked softly, "Where were you?" He kissed her forehead and smiled. "Just business, sweetheart. You don't need to worry." And for the first time, Claire realized she did not believe him. The following week, Claire's doubts solidified into suspicion. At a charity gala, Adrian introduced her to several of his colleagues. She smiled politely, shook hands, played her role as his radiant companion. But when one of the wives, a sharp-eyed woman with too much jewelry and a cruel smile, leaned close and whispered, "Poor dear, does his real wife know you're here?" Claire froze. Her cheeks burned as Adrian whisked her away, laughing, brushing off the comment as meaningless gossip. But the words stuck like thorns. His real wife. That night, while Adrian slept beside her in their hotel room, Claire lay awake staring at the ceiling. She replayed every moment, every gift, every kiss. She thought of the secrecy, the hurried explanations, the way he never stayed the entire night. And then she thought of that woman's smirk. Real wife. Claire slipped quietly from bed, her heart hammering, and crept into the bathroom with Adrian's phone. She hesitated only a moment before unlocking it. He had once, carelessly, entered his passcode in front of her. The messages were there, damning in their intimacy. "Anna, when will you leave her?" "Adrian, soon. You're the one I want. Always. Anna, prove it." Claire's throat tightened. Another woman. Another her. Scrolling further, she found older messages. "Mary, don't be late for dinner. Emily is asking about you." "Adrian, I won't, darling. I promise." Claire's hands shook. Not one woman. Not two. Three. Herself included. By the time she crawled back into bed, Claire's fairy tale had shattered into jagged glass. She lay beside him, staring at the man she thought she loved, and felt something cold and unfamiliar bloom in her chest. It wasn't sorrow. It wasn't heartbreak. It was rage. Over the next few days, Claire played her role with perfect precision. She smiled when Adrian brought her flowers. She laughed at his jokes. She let him believe she was still blind, still wrapped in his spell. But inside, she was unraveling every thread of the illusion. She watched him more closely. She listened to the tones of his lies. She memorized the names in his phone, the faces of the people he surrounded himself with. She wasn't naive anymore. She was studying him, One evening, while Adrian was showering, Claire sat at the vanity and stared at herself in the mirror. The young woman who had once blushed under his gaze was gone. Her eyes were harder now, sharper. She touched the diamond necklace at her throat and realized it was nothing but a collar, one she had worn willingly, but no longer. She whispered to her reflection, "If he thinks I'm his prize, he's a fool." Her own voice startled her, cold, controlled, the voice of someone who had been awakened. The turning point came when Claire, restless and searching, found herself in a bookstore downtown. She wandered aimlessly until her eyes fell on a woman standing in the history section, poised, elegant, with eyes like steel. Mary. They had never spoken, but Claire recognized her instantly. She had seen her face in photographs online, the respectable wife of Adrian Miller. Mary glanced up, and for a moment their eyes met. Claire froze, her heart hammering. Mary's gaze lingered only a second before she returned to the book in her hands, as if Claire were no more significant than a shadow. But in that brief moment, Claire saw it. Pain buried under composure, fury hidden beneath grace. And Claire knew she wasn't alone. That night, when Adrian came to her with his easy smile and practiced charm, Claire kissed him, whispered his name, and played the part he expected. But inside, her mind was elsewhere. She wasn't thinking of his hands on her skin. She was thinking of Mary's eyes, the eyes of another woman who knew the truth, the eyes of someone who might understand. Adrian Miller, for the first time in his charmed life, was not just being deceived by his wives. Now, the youngest, the newest, the one he thought was safely ensnared, had awakened, and she was watching him with open eyes.